I love it when I find a thread and I somehow end up reading it out loud. So this is one of them, by Sulagna Chatterjee. Also, her short film, Belly Date, is out right now. Do check it out on YouTube. Nobody talks about how terrifying it can be to re-enter the dating world when mental health is part of the equation. Dating is usually sold as excitement and possibility, but for many people, it begins with vigilance. Not because intimacy isn't wanted, but because intimacy requires safety, and safety takes time. Unmasking doesn't happen in one neat conversation. It happens slowly when someone feels safe enough to let the truth surface. And that truth is rarely tidy. Sometimes the world feels unbearably loud, like sounds are stacking and lights are too sharp. Sometimes emotions arrive at a volume that can't be controlled, where something small feels catastrophic. Sometimes a coping skill that worked 10 times before suddenly stops working. Grounding doesn't ground, logic doesn't help, breathing doesn't slow anything down. Sometimes it looks like cancelling plans last minute, taking longer to reply, losing interest in things that once mattered. Wanting connection but not having the energy to reach for it. Sometimes it's intense focus followed by total drop-off, forgetting things that matter deeply, feeling overwhelmed by basic tasks. Sometimes it's loving fiercely and then panicking about being too much, fearing abandonment even while reassurance is present. And sometimes it's the quiet stuff that's hardest to explain, wanting presence without solutions, wanting someone to stay without fixing, wanting silence without it meaning distance, wanting to feel safe without having to justify why. This is hard to explain to someone new, especially when previous attempts were met with confusion, minimization, frustration, or quiet withdrawal. So something else develops over time. Internalization. The belief that love is harder here, that staying is an extra task, that once someone sees the full picture, leaving will make sense. So there's hypervigilance, tracking a partner's mood, reactions, energy, waiting for the moment things shift. It comes from learning that care was fragile, that support had limits, that vulnerability often came with consequences. And then there's another behavior that doesn't get talked about enough, the urge to tell someone everything early, sometimes too early, laying it all out after the first date, the symptoms, the patterns, the warnings, not because trust has been built, but because it feels safer to hand over the manual immediately, to say, this is what might happen, this is what it looks like, this is the mess, as an exit ramp. So if they leave, it happens before attachment forms. So rejection feels chosen, not sprung. So there's control over the moment someone decides this is too much. It looks like honesty. It sounds like good communication. But underneath, it's fear. Fear of being loved until symptoms show up. Fear of someone deciding later that they didn't sign up for this. Fear of being slowly abandoned once things get hard. So the disclosure becomes a test. Not will you love me, but will you leave now or later? That belief that leaving is the reasonable response doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from experience, from support disappearing, from affection having conditions, from being shown subtly or explicitly that care was temporary. And alongside all of this lives the heaviest fear of it all. The fear that no matter how much work is done, it will never be enough. People with mental health challenges are often working relentlessly on themselves. Therapy, medication, tools, reflection, accountability, starting again after setbacks, trying again after shame. But there's a constant anxiety that love will always come with a ticking clock. That support will eventually turn into resentment, that fear that being functional enough will always be the condition for staying loved. That is what makes dating so heavy. Not the desire for connection, but the terror of confirming the belief that connection is conditional. What's needed isn't perfection or endless emotional labor or saviorhood. It's willingness, curiosity, consistency, the ability to learn without becoming defensive, the capacity to stay without treating support like a burden. The understanding that sometimes care looks quiet, repetitive, and deeply unglamorous. Unmasking is an act of trust, and trust cannot exist where someone feels like they are auditioning for love. This reality deserves more honesty, more patience, and far more empathy in how we talk about dating, mental health, and what it actually means to show up for another person. Whew! Beautiful words. Amazing. It's like you're in my mind, Sulagna Chatterjee. Lots of love.